I've had insomnia for years. I'm under the care of the sleep clinic. I've had to try and find my own alternatives because substances like melatonin, they'd be giving me melatonin and other sleeping stuff, they don't work. It's quite a big scope when you're talking about your health. Once you hit a certain age, you must know that this could be happening to me and try and help yourself. I think like knowledge is power and it helps you accept things. I didn't accept fibromyalgia. I had a breakdown. I just wanted to be gone. You know, I didn't want to be here until I understood that actually I've got fibromyalgia because of this and because of this. And then how does that work? And so when you start doing your self-research, it's the most empowering thing ever.
Yeah.
No, you're not going crazy. No, it's not you. I think a lot of women, when they become midlifers, they get really sad about it. But actually, there's nothing to be sad about. You know, you've got like more wisdom, you've got more freedom. You know, you might be an empty nester and these chemicals are changing. So you need to know what to do about that chemical change.
Welcome to the 51%, the podcast where we cut through the noise and get back to basics when it comes to women's health. Through expert insights and powerful personal stories, we help you tune in to what really matters. Your body, your well-being, your life. No one-size-fits-all advice, just real conversations to help you understand your health on your own terms. But before we dive in, I have a quick favour to ask. Please hit subscribe and join the 51% community on our website. It's free and it helps us grow, reach more women and create events that really speak to the health and wealth challenges we all face. And finally, just so you know, everything shared on this podcast is for information only. It's not medical or financial advice, and always speak to a qualified expert for support. Monique, welcome to the 51%. It is an absolute pleasure to have you on. Could you please introduce yourself and talk a little bit about your journey from where you were to what you're doing now? That would be fantastic. Thank you so much.
Hi, Shreya. Thank you for having me. My name is Monique Payneeandy. I recently graduated in neuroscience and psychology. So I've been studying the nervous system and the brain and how it works, and also human emotion. So yeah, basically I just had a lot of jobs and I wasn't happy, I wasn't fulfilled. I had like a really strong therapy background and I just thought I'd make the most of it. Became an empty nester, went to uni, and I'm not looking back. I'm thoroughly enjoying my journey so far. Yeah, I've been through a lot. I'm a sufferer with fibromyalgia, ADHD, and yes, I have a lot of isms, isms and quisms, but yes.
No, that's great. It's absolutely amazing that you have gone back to university. I mean, the thought of that makes me feel so kind of, oh my God, there's no way. I wouldn't even know where to begin with that, in the sense of how am I going to remember stuff? I don't even know what day I'm in half the time, let alone all of that stuff, right? But I think it's fantastic that you've done that. And it just proves that, you know, doesn't matter what age you are, if you put your mind to it, you can do whatever you want. And, you know, if you don't understand stuff, you build yourself a support system, right, as well, to help you through it.
The brain is very, you know, like they say, it's very adaptable. So neuroplasticity, you can change the connections that are going on. And I think that's what I just thought, I can't go on like this. I was going through menopause as well, perimenopause, through trauma. And my parents passed away and I was like, I can't go on like this. So I just jumped in 2 feet, had the biggest anxiety attack. But hey, you get past things, you have to keep pushing and you have to keep striving for something better that settles your nervous system.
The first thing I really want to ask you is, you know, with neuroscience, it's something that really fascinates me now. I've never really heard about it so much, and I've been hearing a lot about neuroscience lately, and the whole thing fascinates me. And I think it could almost, it feels like if you get it, you can use it as a tool to really kind of enhance your life in many ways, you know, and I'm talking about health, yeah, enhance your health in many ways. So can you just like explain for the audience on basic terms, what is neuroscience and what does that mean?
Oh, so neuroscience is just fascinating and powerful, and you're right, it can help you if you know about some of it. It's a really powerful tool. So neuroscience is the study of the brain, the nervous system, how it works. It's also the study of when something goes wrong. So it's the science of how your brain and your nerves communicate, how you think and feel and act. And it's the communication from the brain to the rest of your body through nerves. And it's what happens to your brain during things like sleep and pain and emotion. So that's
Yeah.
basically it. It just encompasses everything that's going on from the brain communicating with the nerves in your body. That's the study of neuroscience. It's not as complicated as people probably think when you start to look at it as a machine.
Thank you. I just wanted a kind of, basic level of kind of like an interpretation, because not everyone really knows what that means. And then
Yeah.
we're going to kind of go on to talk a bit more detail about that. So you mentioned you have fibromyalgia and ADHD. So how have you navigated the symptoms and the diagnosis and your treatment, and how does that all connect?
So this is where neuroscience is fascinating and powerful, and it connects fibromyalgia, menopause, and ADHD. So I forgot to say that I was perimenopause when I was about 43, I think.
Yeah.
So I didn't know I had ADHD and I didn't know I had fibromyalgia. These are often treated as separate issues, but the truth is they share like an overlapping biological pathway, especially involving hormones, neurotransmitters, and stress responses. So if you've ever felt like your brain has suddenly changed, or the symptoms like brain fog or leave you feeling overwhelmed, you're experiencing exhaustion out of nowhere, or your thoughts are, it's just stress or hormones, there's probably a scientific explanation for what's really happening.
Mhm.
These symptoms are a part of deeply interconnection in the nervous system. So when dopamine is low, your motivation and focus decline. So that will explain that. So a lot of women feel that in their midlife. But then also mood and pain sensitivity can worsen. So oftentimes you find women saying, oh, I feel really, sore, or this aches or that aches. Sometimes it's like when the estrogen drops, threshold drops with it. When serotonin and norepinephrine is a word that I couldn't say for a long and I sat there practicing one night and I thought, oh my gosh. So serotonin and norepinephrine fall. Emotional regulation, sleep, stress, and tolerance will all shift. They're like not coincidental, but they're biological. So menopause can amplify ADHD. ADHD increases the vulnerability to chronic stress, and then chronic stress will fuel fibromyalgia, which worsens your sleep. So then in turn, poor sleep intensifies ADHD and menopausal symptoms. The conditions feed into each other like a loop. It's quite prevalent in midlife women, and they feel trapped. They don't know what's going on. So this is where things become a bit compelling. So ADHD, menopause, fibro, all overlapping means that they share some of the same neurochemical imbalances. All three involve dopamine. So all three of them reduce the serotonin and norepinephrine and are affected by the decreased estrogen. So this is where we talk about estrogen, and you hear a lot of people talking about it, and your doctor will say, here's a patch. So all three can impair your sleep quality. Hence you'll feel tired or you're not sleeping well, and increase your sensitivity to stress. So the autonomic nervous system is the part of your nervous system that automatically regulates essential functions like heart rate, breathing, digestion, stress responses, and calms states without you consciously thinking about it. So this doesn't mean that one causes the other directly, but they share an overlapping mechanism that when one becomes unstable, the others flare up. So to understand the connection, you need to start understanding like the female brain. So estrogen is not just a reproductive hormone, it profoundly influences your brain's chemistry. So it modulates the serotonin, the norepinephrine, the dopamine, and the GABA, for instance. And all of these are essential for like mood, memory, attention, sleep, pain regulation. When estrogen levels are stable, the brain tends to feel clearer and more resilient and better at emotional regulation. So this is where you see some midlife women just flaring up and having breakdowns and screaming and getting upset and not understanding what's going on. But when estrogen declines, particularly during perimenopause and menopause, the neurotransmitter systems become less efficient. Yeah, the brain becomes more sensitive to stress and more reactive to pain. And cognitive processes like memory, focus can temporarily feel really disrupted. So that's when you're really forgetful, and that can be quite frightening. I feel like I've been through that stage where, I've had such poor memory that it's been actually quite terrifying because you don't understand. You feel quite normal within yourself, but then these things happen like memory loss, flared tempers, sleepless nights, and you just can't understand it because you feel like, oh, I just feel the same. But actually, the neurochemical balances are shifting. So you lose one thing, you might gain another. And sometimes that other chemical is not good for you.
Yeah.
It doesn't keep you acting in the way that you used to. So like many women describe the transition as like a shock rather than a gradual shift, which it kind of is because you don't expect it. And I think that's because hormonally driven changes actively can feel sudden and dramatic. So ADHD fundamentally involves differences in dopamine and norepinephrine. So the regulation of those work in the brain for decision making, for instance, planning, emotional control, working memory and attention. But estrogen is a supporter of these neurotransmitters. So when estrogen is high, many women with ADHD, for instance, experience better symptom control. But as estrogen fluctuates and ultimately declines during midlife, ADHD symptoms often intensify. So emotional regulation becomes harder and focus becomes more unstable and motivation dips. And you'll get time blindness. It's typical with ADHD. I have it all the time. Like, oh my gosh, what's the time? Or I wait for the last minute and then I'll go for something. I'll be like, because the brain is working better under pressure. It's really hard to explain to people that you work under pressure, but you don't want to be under pressure, but that's just how it is.
Yeah, because I guess when you're working under pressure, it's almost like, you work best under pressure, but you're under pressure. So then you might be feeling stressed and your cortisol levels might go up.
There's no dopamine in doing a task that you don't really want to do. So you're not going to really go, right, I want to do it. You're just going to go, I'll leave it until the very last minute. So that's sort of typical in people who suffer with ADHD, but it becomes harder to manage.
I just want to quickly talk about, you mentioned that you've got fibromyalgia. Not many people know what that is at all. And a lot of it goes misdiagnosed as well. So can you just talk about what fibromyalgia is and how it started for you?
So fibromyalgia syndrome it's also known as FMS. It's like a very complex and misunderstood condition. And it was probably formally defined in like 1990 as a chronic pain condition. It affects about several million people in the UK now, and a larger percentage of those are sort of midlife ladies. FMS is characterized by body widespread pain, and some people experience, like myself, I experience insomnia, restless legs, definite brain fog, memory loss, low mood, depression, anxiety, chronic fatigue, numbness, pins and needles, and a definite hypersensitivity to like pain. So stress often makes it worse, and females are probably twice as likely to get it as men. So it's centralized sensitization condition. So this meaning the brain and the spinal cord are more sensitive to sensory signals, especially pain. However, it's not an autoimmune disease, but the immune system does like appear to play a role. So recent studies show that some people with fibro may produce like antibodies that increase pain sensitivity, but not in the way that, say, tissue is destroyed. So we don't call it autoimmune, but we acknowledge the immune signaling can contribute to symptoms in some individuals. It's basically neurotransmitters imbalances. They also play a part where serotonin, again, dopamine and norepinephrine are chemicals that dampen down your pain. So it's more of a functional disorder, meaning that the system will work differently. But again, tissues aren't damaged.
Is there a cure for fibromyalgia? Is there something for it?
Well, you're advised to do CBT. So CBT is going to calm down the vagal nerve in your body, which is important for calming down your nervous system. But there's antidepressants. Neuroimaging has shown that there's like an increased activation in the brain's pain processing regions. And there's also evidence of neuroinflammation and overactivity in like the microglia. That's the brain's immune cells, which may contribute to heightening the pain.
Are there any kind of natural things you can do, you know, more holistic, if someone doesn't want to go down the route of having antidepressants for the rest of their life or for a set number of weeks or months? Are there any holistic ways you can do it, to improve symptoms? Or perhaps you need a bit of both, you know?
Yeah, 100%. I think with me, particularly, I chopped and changed into, you know, traditional medicine, holistic medicine, GP prescripted medicine. You have to see what works for you. But yeah, so there's things like maca root, which balances estrogen and progesterone, especially in like perimenopause, fibromyalgia. It boosts your like energy, your libido, and the adaptogens help your body like handle stress. There's black cohosh that eases hot flushes, night sweats, mood swings, and menopause, and it's got an estrogen-like effect. It'll probably help, you know, somebody with fibro. Ashwagandha like supports the HPA axis, which is responsible for your stresses, your stress response and your hormone regulation. Meditation, mindfulness, that's going to really work on your vagal practices, your vagus nerve. I don't know if you've heard of it, but that is basically part of the limbic system that calms you down. So that is what you need to be doing. You'll end up in sheer panic and you'll end up in sheer pain, or you know, you need to have some routines to calm things down. Pilates, yoga, these are all great inputs into your system. And the same goes for like women that are in menopausal, perimenopausal states. I think that you need to really know how the brain works, what you need to be putting inside it. Diet's really important as well. Exercise, movement, social connection. I think all these things are really important. I mean, I gave up on all those things a few years back. If you'd met me in 2020, I wasn't this person. I push myself to socialize because I know it feels good and I know it helps me. I push myself to keep going. So that's my advice as well. Like keep going, keep finding what makes you feel good.
I guess it's also tuning into your body and also thinking about the positive and negative energy around you and what makes you feel, what and who makes you feel, you know, sad or negative or giving negative vibes, energy, and trying your best to kind of eliminate that.
It's self-preservation. It's protecting your peace. They
Exactly.
don't understand is that when you leave them and you go home or you have a, you know, a flare up, for instance, that's pain intensified. It's like having a constant migraine, but all over your body and all the other symptoms that it presents. So it'll present anxiety and panic attacks, which I get because I know that I physically can't defend myself. Just that knowledge of not being able to have the strength to physically defend yourself is quite frightening because I'm not that person. You know, I brought up 2 kids by myself and worked every job you can imagine. So I I'm not that person. But then you become that person. So then people around you need to be kinder. And I think they need to understand that it's a battle that you fight every day.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it is a battle. But like you said, your energy is really important because they've done studies in neuroscience. How does energy from one person to another transfer? So you need to keep everything really balanced and calm and happy and cool. And, you know, it's not every day is going to be a bed of roses, but it's just like you're suffering with brain fog. That comes from fibromyalgia. That comes from menopause. That comes from ADHD. You get all that all in one. So can you imagine that, you know, you've got this person who's giving you a hard time or just not being very nice to you, or you don't need that kind of negativity or energy. I'm terrible for cutting people out. I am. It doesn't mean that I didn't love them or didn't care for them or didn't want to get to know them as a person or a friend or whatever. It's just that I can't physically
Mm.
up to the limit. I can't do it. So
Yeah.
you gotta go, which is a sad thing to say, but you could explain it to them and say, look, you know, I'm really in a lot of pain. Could you just amp it down just a little bit?
Yeah. And communication is really important. You know, if you can, it's so important to let that other person know what you're going through or what's happening, whether that's physically or mentally, because then at least it gives them an opportunity to understand and change their behavior or actions or the way they communicate. And if at that point they don't change, then you definitely know that person probably shouldn't be in your life in
Yeah.
some form, right? Whether that's keeping them at a distance or just completely kind of saying, actually, you know what, I don't really want to see you again, or whatever that might be.
Yeah, that's why they sometimes refer it as the midlife crisis. It's not, it's a hormonal shift.
Yeah.
And for, you know, many reasons, a lot of women receive their ADHD, for instance, diagnosis in their 30s, 40s, 50s.
Mm.
Symptoms that were subtle and manageable earlier on in life, and they spike dramatically. And then you hear that phrase a lot, oh, she's going crazy, or she's just changed, or whatever. It's not like the estrogen has dropped. It reveals underlying ADHD that might have always been present. So it's a bit like fibro, you know, it might have always been present, but it's a flare up when you get to a certain age because it was better compensated for beforehand with the
Yeah.
levels of neurochemicals that you have. This is like well supported in clinical observation. It's a
Yeah.
growing research. But yeah, it's an explanation as to why you can't remain in toxic environments or why you've just had enough. And that
Yeah.
can bring on depression. So a lot of midlife women experience depression. But there's scientific evidence and there's chemical evidence to say why it's happening and why is it happening now. So as we spoke about this before, but you know, a lot of women just look at their husband of 25 years and say, I don't love you anymore. And that's not always the case. I think it's really good for people to do a little bit of research into neuroscience, 100%.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I think I suspect the 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 divorce rates or separation rates in women and men in their like 40s or 50s is probably substantially quite higher. You know, look, at the end of the day, I think women and men are going through certain transitions, and it's just trying to understand that. And everyone's situation is different, and you've got to look at that situation, but at least you should take a step back and think, is it my perimenopause and my hormonal shifts that's making me look at this person and think, I can't stand you? Or is it the fact that this person has just become someone that's nasty or horrible or whatever? And you just look at them and think, and they start treating you badly. That's a completely different case. But yeah, you should do your research for everything. It's almost like, you know, especially on social media, right? You don't even know half the stuff. Is it even true? Is it correct? How do I know? So it's almost like you have to do your research on that person, on that company, on that drug, on that supplement, on that beauty
100%.
product, on absolutely everything. I mean, and it's so bloody time consuming.
So why wouldn't you research yourself? I'm telling my children, my daughter's 24, Kaya, and my other daughter's 30, and I'm telling them as things are happening. So they're aware. My 30-year-old, when she's 40, and she's a late diagnosis in ADHD as well, by the way. She was diagnosed a couple of years ago. But, I want them to know what this landscape looks like after you hit 40. I want them to know what they might go through, why they might feel sad, why they might get depressed, why they might be, not sleeping at night. A lot of my friends are going through insomnia at the minute. And I'm like, well, it's just because your estrogen's dropping and da 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 da. And then I tell them and they're like, oh, okay. Exercise, daylight, it helps you sleep. You have to do it. Even if you don't want to do it, you have to get out there. And sleep is probably one of the most powerful factors in fibromyalgia. Deep
Yeah.
sleep is essential for resetting your nervous system's pain modulation pathways, for instance. And many people with fibro, they struggle to reach or maintain deep sleep, which is really sad. It's restorative sleep. It worsens pain and fatigue, and it leads
Yeah.
to a cycle that is it's really hard to break.
Mm.
And, people with ADHD tend to start waking up at night. That's why a lot of them are night owls, because, they're getting lively at that time, because there's a lack of neurochemicals that are putting them to sleep. It's just the way it is.
Yeah.
It's part of being neurodiverse. I've had insomnia for years. I'm under the care of the sleep clinic. I've had to try and find my own alternatives because substances like melatonin, they'd be giving me melatonin and other sleeping stuff, they don't work. They will just not work. They'll stop working eventually, or they just don't work. So yeah, it's quite a big scope when you're talking about your health. Once you hit a certain age, you must know that this could be happening to me and try and help yourself. I think knowledge is power, and it helps you accept things. I didn't accept fibromyalgia. I had a breakdown. I just wanted to be gone. I didn't want to be here until I understood that actually I've got fibromyalgia because of this and because of this. And then how does that work? And so when you start doing your self-research, it's the most empowering thing ever.
Yeah.
No, you're not going crazy. No, it's not you. I think a lot of women, when they become midlifers, they get really sad about it. But actually, there's nothing to be sad about. You've got more wisdom, you've got more freedom. You might be an empty nester, and these chemicals are changing. So you need to know what to do about that chemical change. Are you just going to ride the wave? So then you've got to be a really strong individual.
And it depends on the severity, right?
Yeah.
You may be happy to ride the wave and not maybe take certain things or do certain things because, for whatever reason, again,
Yeah.
you may be able to ride that wave, or perhaps maybe you're not able to ride that wave because your symptoms are so severe and it's impacting you psychologically, physically in a way where you can't get on with your normal day-to-day life. So there's a big difference there. And you can only know that kind of stuff is if you really take a step back and start tuning into your body and start understanding what your body's doing. And again, to do that, you need to take some time out to understand that.
Yeah, you do. You need to be kind to yourself. And
Exactly.
you
And
need to, educate yourself. Don't
yeah,
go and watch, Emily in Paris, binge the series. Go and watch a few
that's
YouTubes.
what I do.
Well, that's what I was doing. I was doing that because I was undiagnosed with ADHD and couldn't understand why I was watching 26 episodes of a program back to back and
Yeah.
feeling awful afterwards.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
I wasn't doing that with a partner or a friend. I was doing that by myself. That's when I was like, this is going to keep going like this if I don't do something about it. And that's when I said, let me go and study, because I've always wanted to study neuroscience and psychology, and that was it. And then before you know it, time's moving really fast. 4 years have gone by. I've finished. I'm on to the next stage. I've taken a break this year and I've seen how it affects me. And I've told myself, well, it's not making you feel great that you've taken a break. You're feeling guilty. You're feeling bored. You're feeling unstimulated. There's no dopamine hits. And then I might start shopping. So I know exactly how the chemicals are acting in my brain. So then I
Mm.
do something about it. I don't go shopping, I send it all back. And then I get out there and I start socializing and then saying, right, don't feel guilty for taking the break after yourself. Just know that your body needed the break.
We know that sometimes your brain is sending signals, your hormones are fluctuating, and that is the sole reason why you're feeling a certain way or your body's feeling a certain way. So instead of making rash decisions on perhaps having a divorce or separating or going off and doing something wild or unwild or sitting there in bed all day doing nothing, whatever, however it comes out in you, what would your advice be for women to start understanding that? Where should they start to unpack that?
Think that you need to understand how the autonomic, for instance, nervous system works and things like that, because that governs the state of calm that we're in,
Mm.
alertness, stress, shutting down, and our recovery. I feel like knowing about your body as a machine, knowing about your brain, your hormones, knowing about what's decreasing and what you need to replace. So you might need to go on HRT for a little while until you can adapt to that feeling. Or you might need to take something for your ADHD. You might have to pull in focus for a little bit.
Mm.
There are non-stimulant drugs that are being released, or you can go down the completely holistic route and try something there. I think for women, if you recognize yourself in these patterns, blowing up, having flare ups, getting stressed really quickly, losing your temper really quickly. I think that you're not imagining your symptoms. It's a symptom and you're not too sensitive. You're not failing. I feel like your nervous system is responding to real biological changes in your
Mm.
hormones and your neurotransmitters, your immune signals, your sleep cycles, and your stress pathways. I think you need to kind of make notes on all of those and know what's happening and just be really clear about it and share it with somebody. I
Yeah.
didn't share what was happening to me. I just went quiet and thought, right, what's happening? And then kept it to myself for like a good couple of years. Women historically have been underdiagnosed and dismissed in these areas. So you
Yeah.
have to understand that things are changing now. Like modern neuroscience, it's really validated how women have been feeling and conditions can overlap because it's like the female nervous system is uniquely responsive to hormonal and like neurochemical changes. It really is.
Mm.
So neuroscience has taught us some really important insights that specifically relate just to women's brains and
Mm.
health. So especially like areas, in menopause, pain, emotion. I know one lady who screams at the top of her lungs on a regular, and I'm like, whoa, like you're really going through it. And my heart goes out because I know what's happening. It's probably
Mm.
not her as a person, it's probably her hormonal changes. So I think if everyone could like learn some neuroscience, it would be beneficial, like moving and navigating and accepting how they feel and what the changes are and what's going to happen to their bodies. Like I've learned to calm down my nervous system amazingly through neuroscience. And like I use tools like meditation, movement, vagal practices, yoga. I think it's important, especially for like neurodiverse people with fibromyalgia or menopausal women with any of those, or just menopausal women in general. I think you have to really understand that that is something that's really going to help you. Like
Mm.
you're not breaking or failing, and women who suffer with chronic pain or ADHD, they need to be better supported. But what's going on underneath is something that you can only imagine. It's like having a migraine or a fire system in your head that never turns off. People can't see from the outside.
Yeah.
For you, would you just look normal to your husband? But
Yeah.
inside you could be like, oh my gosh, like everything's falling apart. That's
Mm.
the bit that you need to share.
I
Yeah.
think it's so important that you said, almost like writing down. I think that's one of the key things you can do, acknowledging, you can only acknowledge stuff once you start writing down what you're feeling, what
Yeah.
your body's going through, any pain, any, whatever. It could be anything, like literally my hair, I've gone really grey in the space of like, I don't know, 6 months, or
Yeah.
like things that it might not be anything, but
Yeah.
if you haven't noted these things down, you won't know. Or my skin's really dry,
Yeah.
or I don't know, my vaginal area is really dry. Like literally, there's so much that could be going on in your body daily that we just ignore, right? But
Yeah. So
if it's in black and white, and you can look back and think, oh yeah, okay, so let me look into that now.
I started taking a collagen supplement, which I absolutely cannot live without. It is amazing. That collagen is just putting back, growth in hair and my good skin, my muscles and my bones. Really helps. It helps with the pain in my fibro. I'm not going to say that as a scientific finding because that's just me on a personal level. I'm not advising anyone you've got fibro, go out and take collagen. I'm just
Yeah.
saying there's certain things that your body needs. I'm hoping that one day that women who are going to go through similar situations, we can give them some hope because
Yeah.
there is light at the end of the tunnel. You can improve on the things that are going wrong. I wasn't sleeping and
Yeah.
I didn't know why I wasn't sleeping. And I think even now I have catch up days, but if I don't have the catch up days, I really worry about,
Mm.
gosh, I haven't slept for 2 weeks now. That's a worry because I know that that's reducing my lifespan. It's going to, it's inevitable. Your body needs to reset. I think that you can empower yourself. And I hope that, the younger generation have some neuroscientific knowledge that they can empower themselves with. But I think women now should empower themselves with a bit of neuroscience. I suppose back then you didn't know what to expect, like in later life, and you didn't know you were going to face all these hardships because our parents, our mums never spoke,
No.
right? They never spoke about it. They just look sad at 50 or, they look depressed and you're thinking, why is she depressed? What's the matter? What's happened? But
Mm.
actually, it's just hormonal changes, chemical imbalances. I think, if
Right.
you're better equipped and like I said, what the landscape looks like after 40, I
Mm.
would say that acceptance plays a massive part in any change. And we need to normalize it
Yeah.
and then get the help that we need or find the tools. I mean, the support system is ideally your family,
Mm.
but you don't want to tell them. No, you should tell them. Be
Yeah.
really open and honest, completely open and honest,
Mm.
and let them know. Just give
Yeah.
them reminders. Or if you do have an outburst of, screaming, shouting, apologize and say, look, it's not me. It's just my hormones. It's how I'm feeling. I'm sorry. And try to do something about it. I think
Yeah.
like that part of it is quite important.
Monique, thank you so much for joining me today. It's been a pleasure to have you on. And thank you so much for sharing your journey and also talking about how everything's linked together, because I think that's so fascinating. It's like, these days we treat things individually, and you actually have to look at the whole person and what's going on with your whole body, as opposed to, right, you've got a headache, so let me give you Nurofen. Oh, you've got this ache, give you this. But you don't see, no one connects the dots. And I'm so glad that you've kind of given a brief outline on how you should be really connecting the dots, because a lot of things are linked. So it's great. Thank you so much for that.
Thank you for having me. Thank you so much.